In this video, I will talk about intraventricular hemorrhage, or IVH. IVH is the name for a bleed in the brain. First, I'll talk about the brain and a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. Second, I'll talk about why preemies are at risk for IVH. Third, I'll talk about the 4 grades of IVH. And fourth, I'll talk about complications. This is a simple side view outline of the brain. Surrounding the brain is the bone called the skull. This is the front of the head. The eyes and nose would be here, and this is the back of the head. The brain is made up of mostly brain tissue. Inside the brain are fluid-filled spaces called the ventricles. There are blood vessels near the ventricles called the germinal matrix. Cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, is a water-like fluid inside the brain. It is made from the ventricle lining and is present in the ventricles. The CSF flows through the ventricles and down the spine and back up under the skull to surround the brain. CSF's job is to cushion the brain and protect it. Why does IVH happen in premature babies? In preemies, the tiny blood vessels inside the germinal matrix are very delicate and bleed easily. IVH is a medical condition that doctors do not know how to prevent. Babies born at or less than 32 weeks are at risk for IVH. The more premature the baby is, the greater the risk for IVH. How is IVH diagnosed? All babies born prematurely at or less than 32 weeks receive a head ultrasound at 7 days after birth to see if there is IVH. There are 4 grades of IVH. The scale starts with grade 1 being the least severe or the mildest, with grade 4 being the most severe. In a grade 1 bleed, there is bleeding within the germinal matrix. In a grade 2 bleed, the bleeding extends into the ventricles. In a grade 3 bleed, the bleeding causes the ventricles to expand. In a grade 4 bleed, there is bleeding in the brain tissue. What are the complications from IVH? There is no treatment when the bleeding is happening. The bleeding can damage the brain. Your doctor will discuss the chance of brain damage with you after the baby's head ultrasound. Another complication is a condition called hydrocephaly. This translates to water in the brain. Hydrocephaly happens when the CSF flow through the ventricles gets plugged. To review, babies born at or less than 32 weeks are at risk for IVH because the tiny blood vessels lining the ventricles are delicate and can bleed. 7 days after birth, preemies will receive a head ultrasound to determine if the baby has IVH. There are 4 grades of IVH, grade 1 being the least severe, and up to grade 4 being the most severe. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you learned more about intraventricular hemorrhage, or IVH.